Welcome to Silent Service. My name is Will. You are on for episode 31. I'm so glad that you are here and present with us. And what do I mean by us? Well, today I have a very special guest for you. She grew up in Encinitas, California, and currently lives in Dallas, Texas, where she pours her heart into serving others as a gifted therapist. She is a devoted wife, a proud Baylor alumna, an eloquent speaker, a lifelong learner with a love for books, a former softball player with a competitive spirit, and the kind of friend everyone wishes they had in their corner. To me, she is also a role model, someone I admire deeply, often in more ways than she even realizes. I'm talking about Miss Madison Thomas. Madison, welcome to Silent Service. How are you?
Hello, I am doing well. Thank you for having me, and thank you for that amazing intro. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, of course.
So many things I forgot at one point that I even told you, so I'm impressed that you remember. But
Yeah.
yeah, you nailed hit it right on the head.
Well, good, good. I struggled a little bit with pronouncing Encinitas. I think I got that correct,
Oh,
but I don't
you
know.
killed it. Yeah, you got
Okay.
it. Sound like a native.
Oh, amazing, amazing. That'd be pretty cool. Maybe one day I'll venture out to that part of the country and live there. Who knows?
Yeah, heck yeah, a little Florida East Coast, West Coast crossover.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So I was just delighted over the past 10 minutes or so to catch up with you for a little bit. And, it's funny about maybe a month and a half, 2 months ago, has time really flown by that fast where we were in Arizona and we met for the first time?
Yeah, that July 4th weekend.
Yes, yes. Jeez, jeez. Well, it was there where we got to know each other. And, you stood out to me in a few different ways, but the first of which was because you seemed more interested in other people that were there than you were interesting yourself. In other words, you
Mhm.
practiced this method that I've tried to practice since I learned about it in middle school, where it's best to be more interested than interesting. And
Hmm.
then I saw you walk out real early in the morning to read, and then I was like, bam, she has to be a guest. I would love to have her on Silent Service.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, yeah. So, the way that we usually, Matt and I usually go about our episodes is we always start with MEPS. And are you familiar by chance?
I've heard it done on the podcast once before, but you might have to refresh me.
Yeah, yeah, sure. So this is something that Matt introduced to me. He does this with his wife all the time, where you literally associate one word to each letter of the acronym MEPS. So, how are you feeling mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually?
Mm-hmm.
So, how am I feeling? Like, I'll give it a go. We'll start here. So, mentally, I'm feeling present.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Emotionally, I'm feeling thrilled that I get
Okay.
this opportunity to chat with you today. How lovely. Physically, I'm feeling cold because it's literally an ice box in this office, but it's better than it could be. It could be really warm. Um, and spiritually, I'm feeling gentle thanks to this lovely book. If you're watching on YouTube, that Madison recommended to me, it's called The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. Highly recommend. And this gentleman makes me feel gentle towards myself, towards
Mm.
others, and towards my religion. So,
Ooh, I love that. Okay, I love that you said Khalil makes you feel gentle. That is such a good way to express the way that he brings every aspect of humanity into like the picture of goodness and divine love. That's a gentle. I love that. I completely experience that too when I read him.
yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
I can't believe that he was completely unknown to me, and you so graciously recommended the book. So totally cool.
Okay. So mentally, let's see. I'm in a kind of a transition period right now, going, like I told you a minute ago, from a time of pouring a ton of energy and time out into sort of transitioning into now pulling in for a little bit. And focusing on sort of like what the fall, the winter is for, like storing back up and hibernating and sort of remineralizing, if you will. And so I right now I'm feeling mentally. a little tired, but also hopeful, um, expectant, relieved to like be in this time now. Emotionally, I would say I think that kind of translates um, feeling at ease, finally to just kind of be able to be in this phase of life. Mentally, emotionally, let's see. And then P is physically.
Yep.
Okay. I'm feeling the excitement jitters, not just not nervous necessarily, but those excitement jitters in your body where you feel like your cheeks kind of hurt from smiling a lot because you're excited. So
Oh, yeah.
feeling that. And then spiritually, I'm feeling very curious. I was talking with a really good friend this past weekend, and we were realizing how we were both kind of having this mirrored experience in our life of feeling that this year we had kind of been laying the groundwork for a lot of things that we were hoping to see come to pass in our lives. And that groundwork time has been at moments really challenging and easy to find some hopelessness or some pain in, but it was really reframing to see her to hear her say it in that way, and to see the picture of like, okay, I'm tilling the ground right now in my life with hope and expectancy for what's to come. And it was encouraging to like take the blinders away from just that groundwork moment to see the full picture. And with that brought a lot of like curiosity and hope and sort of like renewed strength. So I'm feeling like a kind of duality of like while I'm really tired and really like looking forward to what's ahead, I also don't know what's ahead and I feel really curious and hopeful for it. So yeah, kind of a duality of both of those things.
Right. Yeah, so fascinating. And for the listener, I'm sure you can already understand that Madison is incredibly eloquent. It's probably one of the first compliments I ever gave you. It's like you were the most eloquent speaker ever, and now the listener
Wow.
knows exactly why. But
That's so fun.
it sounds like the friend you were chatting with, gave you a nice sense of reassurance that you weren't alone in that feeling, sort
Oh,
of
totally.
sort of feeling a bit of anxiety, if you will. I don't want to put words in your mouth
Oh,
of
100%. Yeah. Yeah.
being unsure of what the future holds. When I didn't write this question down for you, but when you feel that way, do you tend to just rely more on your faith than you normally do? Right? Just give your sort of nerves, your worries to the Lord to kind of
Mhm.
rest in his presence. Is that something you think about?
Yeah, definitely. I think since I was very young, my faith, the role that it's played for me is that it was sort of a blueprint for a really safe and loving, secure attachment with a like protective, loving, safe figure. And so I think from the very beginning, I mean, I think a lot of us find faith out of need. It's like need that drives us to God or to our faith. And for me, that was the case, and it was out of that need for that kind of attachment. And so I definitely that was the format, the container in which I like learned to approach and understand God. And definitely to this day, I think that is the way that I find him and in the spaces that I find him in a lot. So yeah, I do. And over the years, it's molded and it's shifted to look different as I have grown and changed. But absolutely, I think my faith is absolutely the backdrop and the like material through which everything else in my life in I've is sort of built and formed.
Right, right. So interesting. And you're in Dallas right now, correct?
Yeah.
And Dallas has a um, sort of, from my understanding, an infatuation with Catholicism, with Christianity. There's a major um, number of citizens in Dallas that go to church. It's like a
Mhm.
thing there. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
much more so than where I'm at in Sarasota. And, I was curious thinking about you. Is that one of the reasons why you decided to leave California and head to Texas because of that fact?
It's actually not.
Oh,
Yeah, I went to a Christian school in California, and so I actually was very much surrounded by a lot of other Christians. And so, yeah, when I was looking for a school or a place, I said what drove me out of California was school. Really, I was looking for a university. So I had applied to schools in California. I was applying to schools in Texas and other places as well. And having like a supportive sort of environment of faith was something that I was looking for in whatever place I relocated to, but that doesn't necessarily wasn't specific to like the, culture of the city as a whole, just maybe more so the school itself. So, um, yeah, that wasn't initially what drove me out here, but it definitely has been a new experience for sure now being in an environment like this. Um, yeah, and I think that is um, if I'm being totally honest, for the positive, but also in some ways for the negative too. So yeah, and I'd love to, you can ask me whatever you want on that. But
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So interesting. I just loved getting to know the people that sort of think the same way that I do in terms of faith, which is a very large component of our podcast of silent service.
Mhm.
And I wanted to ask you that because, here in Sarasota, we have uh, a large number of retirees,
Mhm.
and because of that, not a ton of young people. And for the longest time, since I've lived in Sarasota, I haven't found the greatest number of people who are devout Christians. And for the longest time, I've just gone to church alone. And
Mhm.
so it's great to be able to surround myself with people that are also quite religious. But in terms of you, Madison, another reason why I wanted to bring you on here is because you have this ability to make people feel very comfortable around you.
Oh, thank
And
you.
so, it makes total sense that you are a therapist and now a supervisor to grad students, which is so cool. You're obviously moving up very fast in the world, which is awesome. But I mean, I'm sure, well, I know for a fact that you're modest, you don't like to toot your own horn, but have you always been that way, making people feel comfortable around you? Is that just
Wow.
something that is a part of you, or how does this work?
That's an incredible question. First of all, thank you. That is really kind. And it's one of my favorite compliments to receive from people. I love when people feel
So you've heard this before. Other people share the same sentiment that I do.
I I have, yes, I
Okay.
have. And yeah, like I said, it's to feel trustworthy is definitely one of my favorite things to be acknowledged. And to answer your question, I think the roots, the foundation for sure has been there since I was young. And I think as I've grown in the different environments that I've been in, and of course the work that I do, some of those skills became more formalized and were invested in a greater effort. But I think it really started, the foundations of it was growing up. I was the eldest daughter in my house in a sort of multicultural home. And if you've ever heard of like birth order psychology, there is sort of this caricature of like the eldest daughter where she kind of grows up to be, well, matures a little bit quicker, grows up to be kind of reliable and find like caretaking tendencies, maybe sometimes a little bit of like an over-identification with that role, sort of a natural mediator, problem solver. And so I definitely feel like there were layers of my, experience within my home that sort of shaped naturally those qualities inside me. And then layering that with my experience of faith, I think that only sort of like emboldened some of those qualities. And then, yeah, as that kind of pointed me and drove me towards my work as a therapist. I felt like that was a place where those skills were naturally very useful, and it was something I really, cared about and was interested in. And so then finding my work, and then, of course, growing my faith. I think all of those things then coming together began to sort of help maybe build and strengthen some of those skills in a well, more concrete way.
Yeah, for sure. So it's almost like you've always been a caregiver, if you will. Doesn't even matter. It might not even matter if they're a part of your family. You're just always looking to support somebody however you can.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like that has been a foundational part of who I am from the beginning, and yes, it can be really good, but then also it can, if not necessarily health seen in a healthy way or protected with boundaries can also be problematic. And so making sure that the right motivation underlays my caretaking, with others, or the way that I show up in relationships with people is really important.
Sure. And before we jumped on the episode, I was telling you a little bit about my background in therapy. But what I don't think I've ever shared with you is that I had a small stint where I was effectively a social worker, unbeknownst to me at times. And I do want to ask you a little bit about that here in just a little bit. But
Totally.
I do want to dive into your career if we may. And so
Yeah.
I know for a fact that you have to keep all of your client names and I guess stories completely anonymous, correct?
So yeah, I can share general kind of stories with no identifying information or
Okay.
names like that. So I can reference kind of general themes or things like that, but nothing too specific.
Okay. Well, so as a kid, Madison, as
Yeah.
you know, I went to just so the listener knows, I went to therapy at my family's request. We had some hardship going on and they thought it might be beneficial for me to attend a couple sessions. But you see, I was ashamed to admit that I was enjoying these sessions just because I felt a stigma around it. I wasn't comfortable letting my best friend know that I was doing it. Didn't even really want to let extended family know that I was a part of therapy sessions. But I later came to realize that, I can be in the gym or run and as much as possible to make my physical health as good as it possibly can be, but I can't lack my mental health, nor can anyone, because
Yeah.
without that, we have nothing. It's almost
Hmm.
like if you don't have mental health, but your physical health is, is wonderful.
Hmm.
It almost like depletes the concept. It's irrelevant. Without mental health, you have nothing.
Hmm.
So, for a listener out there that feels hesitant about going to a therapy session like I did, is there something you might say to help them decide on whether therapy is right for them? Is there some kind of convincing you have to do within your job? I'm curious about that too.
So I'll answer sort of the first part of your question, which was like, what would I say to someone who asks, therapy is mental health important?
Yeah.
I would say, well, is it important to go to the doctor? Is it important to get checkups? Is it
Yes.
important when you have a physical wound that you attend to that wound, that you put antibiotics on it and stitch it up or whatever is needed to care for it? Is it important that if you have an ache or a pain somewhere, that you get curious about where that comes from and what might be causing it so that you can address any issues that are there?
Right.
Um, and if the answer, which I hope it is, to any of those questions is yes, then therapy is equally as important.
Yeah, you're almost like a salesperson as well. Be happy to pull out my wallet and pay for a session right now. I'm convinced already.
And I think it's something that is kind of weird for us to understand in the West because our healthcare system really fractures our body in and of itself, right? You have a specialist for everything, but we also kind of act like we're just a head floating on top of a body and that one doesn't affect the other. When to say that your mind, body, and spirit are connected is almost an understatement because they're not just connected, they are the same thing. And so yeah, what affects your mind is just going to reflect in your body. And what is experienced in your body is going to reflect in your mind. It's not necessarily that one impacts the other, it's just they are almost reflections, mirrors of each other. And so Yeah, I mean, if you care about your health at all, for sure, mental health is hugely, hugely important.
Right.
And that's not to say like that, shame on anyone for not getting therapy, because the reality is therapy is really expensive. And like I mean, there are tons of barriers to care, which as with my social work background, that's something that I, really care about and want to bring into my work with attention and the way I make my services accessible. But um, yeah, and there are tons of ways that to care for your mental health, right? That aren't just therapy. People have been for centuries, living without access to that, type of care now, but also for centuries we've lived life in very different kinds of environments, and there were certain built-in supportive structures that were very beneficial for someone's overall well-being that just kind of don't exist the same way in our modern world. And so, yeah, yeah,
Wow.
therapy, to answer your question, yes, is extremely, extremely important. And I think is one vital piece of taking care of your mental health, the same way that going to the doctor is one vital piece of caring about your physical health, right? Like we don't just go to the doctor and then forget about our health the rest of the time, right? We work out, we pay attention to what we eat, and we see the sun, and we, move. And just like our mental health, right? We see a therapist to investigate, to reprocess, to work through those psychological wounds that exist. Um, but outside of therapy as well, we pay mind to how we care for our mental health. So yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you so much for that response. I mean, when you're in a session with somebody, I suppose age is irrelevant, but what does it feel like to have a client, whether you can see it in their eyes or in their, their verbiage, they're simply having this epiphany where they're like, why didn't I have a therapy session with you years ago? I mean, that must be the most fulfilling thing ever because they're obviously attending therapy, but you made them feel that way. So
Mm,
that must be incredible, and it probably happens quite
mm,
frequently, excuse me, with new clients.
mm. That's a great observation. And I hear a lot of people say all the time, and I'm sure if you're a therapist listening to this, you've heard this a million times, but everyone will say, wow, your work must be so rewarding. It must be so rewarding. And I've never connected with that word, and it's because I feel like it's not my reward. I feel like I'm not the one necessarily doing the heavy lifting of the work. I think that my work is meaningful. It gives me a lot of meaning. It's really valuable to me, but I don't know if I necessarily connect with the word rewarding. And the way that I feel, and you didn't say that, but I was just kind of connecting like sort of the essence of what you were asking to sort of that frame of thought. And the way that I feel when a client has a moment like that is awe. I feel a sense of, wow, for me, my work is extremely spiritual, whether or not we're talking about God or not, because where we're talking about love, where we're talking about goodness, where pain is naturally reorganizing into peace, that is God. And so I am in awe when I'm seeing clients make these connections and they show up and they're like, I feel like I'm worthy again. And I never felt like I would feel that in my life. And to me, I'm just like, it's reverence. Um, so yeah, yeah, it's
That's beautiful. Did
thank
somebody
you.
say amen? Was that you listening?
Thank you. Thank you. And yeah, and I don't want to, yeah, I don't want to sort of like demean because I think people mean so well when they say like, oh, Matt, you must feel like your work is so rewarding.
But the word
And
is meaningful.
totally. Yeah,
Okay.
like if at least for me, I totally like understand and appreciate how well-meaning two people are when they say that. But for me, like my actual lived experience is that I'm just like, wow, it is so cool to watch this. this play out and for, to be such a like a safe and loving witness to this work that's happening right in front of me.
Right, right. Fascinating. And obviously you have, I'm assuming you have a ton of breakthroughs within the context of your work, but there also has to be times where it's really difficult,
Oh,
right?
for sure, yeah.
If you had to
That's
boil it down to just one little tidbit, what would you say is the most difficult aspect of your work?
yeah. It's funny because a lot of people assume that because so I my specialty is in trauma. I don't know if you know this. My specialty is
I
in
didn't know that. No.
yeah, if it's so I work with I do EMDR. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. And I work kind of tandem with like EMDR, IFS. These are kind of the modalities that I work from. So a lot of the clients that I see are um recovering from trauma, whether that's single event trauma, like you were in a car crash or something like that, or if it's more layered and complex trauma, which is like something like child abuse or um, spiritual abuse, or think just being in kind of environments where there's high levels of toxic stress and abuse taking place over a period of time.
Okay.
And so, yeah, so my specialty is in trauma. And a lot of people will, say, oh my gosh, like it must be, so hard for you to take home this trauma, just hear about, be kind of immersed in this trauma all day. I think that is naturally the assumption. I totally understand that. And of
Right.
course, there are days where I get to the end of my day and I'm like, whew, that was a lot. But I think the hardest part about the work itself is not just bearing witness to the stories, but because I have a good container, right? Like I can at this point, like in my professional work, like I've learned how to partialize these things and separate my professional self from my heart self and be present how I need to be in the moment. But is the hardest part is maintaining the therapeutic relationship while also trying to enforce boundaries and maintain like a safe and appropriate connection with the client. Because the most important factor, I guess, for success in therapy is not anything other than the therapeutic relationship. It's the
Right.
connection between the therapist and the client. A lot, and research even shows more so than the modality that the therapist is using, their skill level, anything like that. Those things, of course, are important, but the most important is the relationship between the therapist and the client. And so, and there's situations where I have to report an abuse that is brought to me, or where a client really wants something of me that is not appropriate for me to give or to offer. It's communicating my boundaries and also maintaining a strong therapeutic relationship at the same time when that client is not necessarily happy about those boundaries or when that really scares them or creates frustration or tension. And so it's like, yeah, addressing those things and then also being willing to sort of continue working through and addressing the ways that that then makes the client feel about you and your work. And sometimes that's a conversation, sometimes it's several conversations, but yeah, that is definitely, I think, the more challenging aspect, I think, for me in my work. And that might be different from someone who's doesn't come from more of a people-pleasing background. But for me, that is what sort of raises my nerves a little bit more.
Yeah, yeah, it's so enlightening because, please tell me if I'm wrong, Madison, but for the longest time based on my experience with therapy, I've been under the impression that most therapists spend the vast majority of their time listening. But, with regards to boundaries and not adhering to different tasks that a client may ask of you, you probably have to interject here and there to, you know, offer those boundaries. And with that, do you actually spend the vast majority of your time listening, or do some clients would they prefer for you to just speak and tell them, your sense on what they're going through? I guess is it 50-50? What does that look like?
Yeah, I would say definitely across the board listening is a good majority of what I do. I would say it's listening and guiding,
Hmm.
guiding with questions, guiding with, safe and loving curiosity, but definitely listening. And I have a framework, but I like to say that it's a mosaic structure where I sort of allow the client and their needs and the way that they like to learn and process to sort of guide the way that I bring that structure forward. Some clients really love practical, like homework, like they love that kind of just real one, two step implement kind of stuff. And some clients, they like to think and sort of brainstorm very abstractly. I know, like, so I'm, not shy about the fact that I am a therapist and I need therapy. I go to therapy. And the way that I work with my therapist is that, like, she knows by now that when I come, I have to just like throw everything out on the whiteboard. And we just kind of have to like draw the lines between all these different random ideas that I throw out. And by the end of the session, we pull back and we've got that picture. But for me, like I am a very abstract thinker. I'm a very, sort like I think in that way. And so like, she's been helpful in kind of adapting to me in that way. But so yeah, like it varies, of course, with every client based on their needs. But for the most part, yeah, I see my role as being a witness, as being a just like guiding sort of figure, mostly with curiosity and with questions, but I don't like to talk that much.
Right, right. I had no idea, and thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that you
Yeah,
yourself as a therapist also attend therapy, but I suppose, you should in a sense because you're effectively walking the walk, preaching the benefits of therapy and then actually doing it yourself. So
for
it's almost like you're learning more about yourself, how to handle different seasons of life that you're either enduring or enjoying. But meanwhile, you're also learning potentially how to be a better therapist from somebody that is your therapist. So how
totally.
how
Yeah.
crazy that sort of combination. I think that's wonderful. I'm assuming you go outside of your own therapy company, or
Yeah.
how do I say
Yeah, my
um
practice, my
practice,
group
excuse
practice.
me.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, I do. I do. I go outside. Yeah, see someone else.
Wow. Okay. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I know you want me to share this. I was for a short while, about 8 months, a social worker. I was working within a domestic violence shelter, and there's a
Ah.
section of the shelter for therapy.
Hmm.
And I suppose that a particular mother thought that I gave off the energy of a therapist, and she didn't check with, my supervisor or anybody else to see if I actually was, in fact, a therapist. And so she simply walked up to me one day and said, would you be willing to do a session with my son? And I was
Oh.
a volunteer social worker. And so I said, sure. I maybe it was a lapse in judgment, but I didn't check with anybody. And the next thing I knew, about 24 hours, I was sitting with her son in
Mm.
a therapy room. And
Mm.
we had a whiteboard, we had puzzles and Legos. And, I found that the little guy was super shy and he was really hesitant to talk about what was really bothering him. But I
Mm.
knew that he wanted me there to listen to him because he
Mm.
asked his mom to set up a session with me. It was,
Wow.
part of the package, if you will, that you were offered once you stayed at the shelter. And, you know, may I ask what you do during these kinds of sessions when you have a client that is just, not interested in sharing, maybe a younger client that is there, not necessarily because he wants to, but because somebody that loves him thinks it's best for them, for
Sure,
him,
sure.
as an example. So
Yeah,
I'm sure you
absolutely.
see that every now and then.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I think like you said, with the adults that come to me, for sure, they've come on their own volition, and so it's maybe a little bit different. But yeah, I've had some
Yeah.
kids definitely that weren't super thrilled or excited or motivated to be there. And I, especially with the younger kids, really just focus on building the therapeutic relationship, just focus on engagement, on play. And I'll even have to, talk to parents about that when some parents are like, it's been 4 sessions, why aren't we seeing a change? And when it comes to young kids, I will absolutely let them kind of guide and show me and tell me when they are ready because they will just spill it. When a kid feels safe, they'll go. They'll just say it.
there's
And
almost like a threshold there, 4 or 5 sessions. Once we
exactly.
get past that, then they're like, "Hey, Madison,
No,
how was this?"
yeah,
And you're like, "Hey,
right.
so and so, it's so good to see
Totally.
you."
Oh, totally. I mean, I'm sure if you have any, like, children in your life, or for people who have known children to any degree, it's like, when they first meet a stranger, sometimes they're hiding behind mom's leg and they're a little shy. But then as soon as they feel safe with you, it's, can I play? Can we do this? Can we do like, and they're just telling you the most random, my uncle said blah, 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 right?
Yeah,
Like they'll
yeah.
just go. And so that kind of even goes back to that importance of the therapeutic relationship, like especially with children, that cannot be overlooked and it can't be rushed. The my supervisor would say the slower you go, the faster you get there. So it's all just kind of about just sort of waiting, and being, again, that safe, loving container for the work to be done. Um, yeah,
So it's
truly.
almost like patience is a prerequisite to becoming a therapist, like
Oh, for sure.
especially for kids.
Oh, for sure. Especially with kids.
And
Yeah.
so I take it you guide your clients, but for the most part, I could totally be wrong, but you sort of let them lead the way in a sense. Like what may I help you with today? Type thing.
Yeah. Okay. So, are you familiar at all with EMDR?
I'm not, I don't even know what it stands for.
Okay, amazing. So I'm
Totally
excited.
ignorant.
No, amazing. So if I could just kind of plug a little bit for you on the podcast, if that's okay.
Plug and play, let's get it.
Let's do it. Okay, so EMDR, it stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And it's a new, it's somewhat new. It was kind of created around the 1990s, but so it's just recently sort of gained in popularity and recognition. But it was created originally as a trauma therapy. And essentially the founder of it, she was walking in a park one day and just looking around at all the trees, and realized as she was walking that she started to like feel a little bit better, that the distress around her thoughts were was lessening, and she got, I wonder if there's something to this. And so they took it to some clinical trials and realized that the providing bilateral stimulation to your body, which is movement or activation on one side of your body in a rhythmic motion. So if you're watching like online, that would I'm just kind of putting my hands here on my chest and tapping each side in a rhythmic way. What
Okay.
it does is it sort of turns it sort of helps the central nervous system settle into your parasympathetic state. So helps you kind of stay grounded and connected in your body. And what EMDR does is it helps you remain in that connected, grounded state while you process traumatic memories. And it's an 8 phase protocol. And so there's a sort of a structured way that you sort of build safeguards as you move throughout the process to make sure the client is safe, and that you're moving along. But essentially, it helps decrease the emotional charge or distress around traumatic memories. And so it like decreases anxiety, depression, all sorts of even somatic experiences that result from difficult or traumatic experiences. And the process is extremely client led. There is a structure to it, but is extremely client led. And so what I'll see happen is, well, the client will bring forth this traumatic experience and maybe some of the beliefs that are attached to it, or that, I'm worthless or I'm powerless or whatever it is. And the distress level is just a 10. Like it's just, I can't bring it up without, just being super, super overwhelmed and distressed. And I'll guide the client in series of bilateral movements while I just ask them to lovingly witness whatever they notice happening in their body and in their mind. Maybe the picture changes, maybe they feel things in their body. And I check in at different stages, but I have no dialogue, no intervention. I'm just checking in. Hey, are we safe? Great. We keep going. Keep just kind of sitting there and witnessing whatever our mind brings forward. And it happens almost every single time is that your brain, as it's processing, will naturally reorganize this distressing memory into something very safe, very loving, and very peaceful. And that all of a sudden the client will it'll start moving into positivity. It'll be like, oh, I got through that really hard thing and I'm safe now. Or I am capable. Or I noticed this part of the picture that I didn't notice in the beginning. And I saw that, like, my dad actually did come around and put his arm on me and tell me he loved me. And that's sticking out to me now. And I feel really loved and I feel really warm. And it's like, without any intervention, without any dialogue from the therapist, the pain and the distress and disorder will naturally organize itself into love and peace and goodness. And to me, that is just the essence of God. It's like no no intervention, no, like here, but maybe you should think about this or think about this. It's just when given that container of safety and love and peace, we naturally organize into health. We naturally heal. It's this just automatically regenerating, self-healing sort of template that every single one of us, Christian or not, has inside of us. And to me, that is just the essence of what it means to be made in the image of God. That it's like we just, in the presence of perfect love, in the presence of safety, we naturally organize into health.
Right.
Um, and
So,
yeah,
so cool.
so fascinating. And truly, it gives me the shivers every time I am watching a client go from just, the essence of this traumatic experience to just kind of having a completely different emotional response to it, where it's now I think about this and I feel like, it can't change the facts of the case, right? Like traumatic experiences are always going to be negative. I'm not going to rewrite the story and be like, well, it's a good thing that this thing happened to you because, whatever. Painful things, of course, are always going to be hard, but we can look back at it and we can choose what it is that we pull from it and the effect that it has on us in the present moment.
So cool. So you are a therapist, Madison, but you're also a meditation guide, it seems to me. I take it based on how much you know about what you just shared. You tend to use this practice, this habit, if you will, all the time.
Mhm. Yeah, and there is now that's it's funny you say that. I hadn't thought about it in that way because there totally is, I think, a lot of like maybe in the Venn diagram, there's like, EMDR and meditation and somatic work, and there's definitely a huge space where all of these things overlap for sure.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
definitely after a particularly distressing session, I'll just kind of naturally segue us into like a couple minutes of maybe meditation and body work for us to just sort of kind of very peacefully off ramp into a safe state before we leave the appointment.
Right, because your intent is to, I'm assuming, is to always leave them better than you found them, right?
Totally, totally.
That,
And there's some middle part of that is sticky and hard. And sometimes there's a little bit of it gets harder before it gets better when we're, bringing up those raw things. But I always, always, always am making sure that a client is safe when they're leaving my office, right? Like I don't want them in the middle of, a distressing, panic attack or something of the sort. We're making sure that our nervous system is grounded, is reoriented before we are leaving the office.
wow, so cool. And I take it, again, I could be wrong. This is one of the beauties of having you here because I'm truly outside of just well, several sessions when I was real young, I haven't had much experience with therapy ever since. But so it sounds like you effectively give your clients these habits to help them even when they're not in a session, so that they
Totally.
might be able to put their hands on their chest and go through one of these practices on their own.
Hmm.
Because, and I especially love the fact that you said whether they're a believer or not, Jesus loves them regardless of if they attend church every Sunday, regardless of whether they bring out their Bible. It's there's a particular sense of calm, sense of comfort that stems from these practices that you're walking them through. And whether
Hmm.
they know it or not, it sounds like it is the Lord helping them
Yeah.
out in these
Oh my
instances. I
gosh.
love that.
Yeah, totally. Totally.
Yeah. Yeah. So fascinating. You know, um, Within the context of silent service, one of the practices that we attempt to explore with our listeners and with the people that are a part of this movement, if you will, is this concept of giving. And there was a page in this book that you so kindly shared with me, The Prophet, and it's
Yeah.
just a few sentences, and I was hoping to just as we close here, I just wanted to pick your brain on them if that's okay, Madison.
Oh, 100%.
Okay.
Anytime we talk about the prophet, best believe I'm locked in.
Okay, amazing. Because we have quoted the days at the end of each silent service episode, and one of them is obviously from today is from Khalil.
Of course, of course.
So yeah, naturally this one it reads, therefore give, and I would tell you the page, but there are no pages in my copy. But it reads, therefore give now, that the season of giving may be yours and not your inheritors. You
Mm,
often say, I would give, but only to the deserving. And it's crazy because I literally said that a few episodes back.
wow.
Matt was asking me about the concept of giving, and I said, I love to give, but I attempt to do so for those that I find are deserving. But then it goes on to say, the trees in your orchard say, not so, nor the flocks in your pasture. They give that they may live, for to withhold is to perish.
Yeah.
Surely he who is worthy to receive his days and nights is worthy of all else from you. And I read that this morning and I picked my head up and I was like,
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
S- So I'm like,
Mm,
maybe somebody isn't deserving of a gift that I may have to offer, whether it's a tangible product or whether it's my time. Um, but it's almost like I should give it anyway. Right?
mm,
Right. So if I were to, I don't know, go to a local jail and give somebody my time just to sit and listen to them,
mm.
my previous self may not think they were deserving because they committed a serious crime, but
Yeah.
this Khalil's saying that they are deserving.
Mm. You're making me think of, and maybe you can help me connect it because I'm totally gonna like butcher the words, but I think it's a C.S. Lewis quote where he says like our job is not to decide who is worthy of love. The essence of the quote is like it's just our job to love and the rest is God's to organize. And it just kind of it makes me think of that very concept. And maybe, yeah, if you can look it up, you can tell me where I'm headed with that. But no, 100%. I love the phrase in that very poem, and I think it's kind of around that section where he says like, um, "For if he who drinks from the ocean of life, is he not also worthy to drink from your little stream?" It's just kind of to me this acknowledgement that like every breath that I take, everything that I have, it's not really mine. It's and everything has been given as a gift to me. And so, how does it benefit me to hold things like this? Because if I hold someone, a friend told me one time, she was trying to give me sort of a little analogy, and she said, I want you to hold out your hands like this, like fists in front of you. And I did it, and she started trying to pile things on my hands. And she's like, when you're holding your fists like this, you can't take what I'm giving you, can you? And I said, no. She said, well, now open your hands. And I opened them, and she started piling things on my hands, and I could carry everything. And she said, it's because when you, in fear, try to hold on to every little thing that you have, you hold on to it, yes, but you also close yourself off from receiving anything else.
Right.
But when your hands are open, when you give freely, you also open that channel to receive freely as well.
Yeah.
And
Oh my
it's kind of,
goodness.
yeah, it's like the very thing that you were wanting to do, you restrict yourself from and trying to hold on to it.
Okay. So it's almost like I feel as though that relates to the law of attraction, right?
For
If you're
sure.
not open to a life of abundance, your hands are effectively closed. You're constantly
Totally.
thinking that, oh, this is going to happen to me again. I'm going to get stuck in traffic again. The
Totally.
the obedience of that law of attraction is going to be like, oh, doesn't believe because your hands are closed, which is fascinating. So,
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. And it it makes me think about how like when it comes to, my background in mental health, we realize that every single thing about your behavior and the thoughts that you think, it connects to a belief that you hold about yourself or about the world. And when your belief is, that I'm worthless and no one likes me, every, look from a stranger on the street is going to validate that and is going to continue to strengthen the thread of that belief inside you. But if those train track, like I use the analogy of train tracks a lot, and thoughts being kind of like trains that travel down the tracks of our beliefs. But if our belief is, that I'm inherently worthy and that I'm loved by the people in my life, every smile, every little wink, every warm hug is going to push those train tracks even deeper and even deeper. And then those become the lens through which we see and experience every single thing that we take in. And when those lens are, I'm loved and I'm worthy, well, gosh, like the world is amazing.
Yeah, yeah,
And when those lens are, I'm horrible and everyone hates me, the world is a really lonely, scary, dark place. And yeah, the power of our beliefs is they are the thoughts that we think, the behavior that we exhibit, and the quality of every relationship that we have.
right, right. Life is happening for us, not to us, right, Madison?
Totally.
Yeah, yeah,
Hey, I
yeah.
think that's actually an Oprah quote that I shared with
Oh,
you from the end of her book, What Happened to You?
yeah, I love Oprah, steward
Yeah,
of the law of attraction. But here,
yeah,
let's see what C.S. Lewis has to say. He says
yeah, yeah.
that he would agree that it is not up to us to choose who is deserving of love. Okay, so he and Khalil would be good friends.
Oh,
He
totally.
believed that Christian love, agape, which is a Greek word, isn't it?
Totally. Yep.
Is an act of will, not a feeling based on the lovability of the other person. In his
Hmm.
view, our feelings do not determine who receives our love, our actions and intentions do.
Mm.
Okay, I'm going to write down to read more C.S. Lewis. This is fascinating because there's so much more. Love for oneself as a guide, love is an act of will.
Yeah.
Um, do not waste time bothering whether you love your neighbor. Act as if you did. Okay,
Mm.
I can do that.
It makes he has so many good quotes. Another one that I think just connects to this is he says, and I don't know what book it is, he says that give love freely. Love is never wasted because its value does not lie in reciprocity.
Right,
The
right.
value of love is not that we give it just to receive it. The value of love is that, like, I think, I mean, that's a big question. That's a big answer there. But
Yeah.
I mean, love is, if we believe God is love, right? And God spoke everything in the universe into being, made us in our image. Love is the connection between you. God, and love is there, is the connection between you and a child, between you and your best friend. It's the beautiful thoughts that you're thinking about yourself and the beauty you're beholding around you. Like, if God is literally like we are a sponge in the ocean and God is the water, like the value of, like, there's no when we give love, we feed ourselves. Like that,
Yes.
that essentially is
Right.
it.
It's like the idea of happiness is actually counterintuitive. And I don't know if I shared this philosophy with you, but we're all trying to figure out what's going to make us happy, materials, vacations, excuse me,
Totally.
possessions. Um, but I believe it's counterintuitive. It's not what you can do for yourself, but what you can do for other people.
Oh, for sure.
And Madison, I have taken up so much of your time, and I need to share this last
You're
bit with you
good.
because
Please, please.
I think that for a long time I've focused on the antithesis of what Khalil is saying in this book, in that I ought to find people that are deserving of the acts of kindness that I set out to give. And sometimes like I said, I do try to focus on only those that are deserving. Yet I had this memory as we were talking. I remember being in Montana walking with my roommate Jesse at the time, and we walked past this homeless person that saw my sweatshirt. I had an Orlando Magic sweatshirt on. He was like, Orlando, I used to live there. Um, and then the next thing I knew, I was in this full-blown conversation with this gentleman, a homeless person, for 10 minutes. And my roommate, after we walked away from this gentleman, he said, Will, why did you just spend 10 minutes listening to that guy? Jesse was like, I don't even know what he was saying. And she was still kind, more, I guess, don't mean to sound self-absorbed, but more impressed that I was willing to listen to him. And I remember looking at Jesse and thinking, or saying, Jesse, I don't know if that person has spoken to anybody today. It was 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I don't know if
Yeah.
he'll speak to anybody for the rest of the day. So
Hmm.
that 10 minutes might be the best part of his day.
Hmm.
And so a former self of mine could have been, maybe he's not deserving of my love. I don't know what he's done, why he's the way that he is, but he's totally deserving because he's a human and a
Hmm.
child of God, just like you and I. So
Yeah.
just wanted to share that with you.
Yeah, that's an awesome story. I love that. I love that so much.
So because I've taken up so much of your time, I do just want to wrap
Yeah.
up with this little Khalil
Yeah.
quote, and it's
Oh,
on
please.
giving. Naturally, he writes, "You give but little when you give of your possessions. It is when you give of yourself that you truly give." Right? So
Mhm.
money doesn't matter. Possessions don't matter. You can give
Yeah.
your time, give yourself. So, I mean, Madison, I can't even tell you how appreciative I am, and the listeners are that you've given us your time and allowed us to gain knowledge in your presence. You're extremely eloquent, as you know, intelligent, so appreciative. Thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you so much for being an
Yeah.
incredible host, asking such good questions, and something that you are super, super good at. And is positive regard. I think every thing that comes out of my mouth or that I've watched when I watch you interact with other people, you always are receiving with a smile on your face and believing and seeing the best in the other person. And that is such an underrated quality when it comes to friendship and just expressing love and being a good human. So I really appreciate that about you, that you are such a curious person and so willing to give positive regard to at least us in every conversation I've ever had with you, but to everyone I've also watched you interact with. So thank you for being, that expression of love. Thank you for yourself and for having me. It's been an honor.
Of course. Thank you so much, Madison. I'm just trying to make him happy, staring down upon me. So, um,
Well, my husband Ryan always says whenever I feel nervous about that, I feel like something I did is not enough or too much or whatever. Ryan says there's nothing that you can do to make him stop smiling at you.
oh my gosh, I
I,
love that so much.
nothing you can do to make him stop loving you, stop looking at you with eyes of love.
Goosebumps. Gee,
Truly, truly.
thank you, Ryan, and thank you for sharing that with me, Madison.
No, for real. Of course, of course.
All right, everybody, we will see you on the next episode of Silent Service. Madison, thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you. Have a good
Yep,
one.
you too.